This show is a production of the Best in Tabletop Network. Be your best in every aspect of your game. Find us wherever you find your podcasts, or check us out on YouTube for more Bat Reps podcasts and shows. If you like what we're doing, you can join our Discord through the Best in Tabletop Patreon group or our YouTube members only area, where you'll get access to our entire library of content. Thank you for listening. Welcome to Best in Faction,
a podcast about playing Warhammer 40k competitively.
I'm Colin.
And I'm Mitch.
And we are Mitchless.
I'm Mitchless. I'm Chuck.
Yeah. We are Mitchless. Mitch is doing some stuff today that couldn't be avoided. And so we wish him luck with whatever the heck he's doing in his mysterious life. Yeah. So good morning, everybody. It's my favorite joke, right? It's Chuck and Colin in the bonnet, like it's, So, 9 a.m. on a Sunday, it does not feel nearly as early as 7 a.m. on Tuesday when I do This Week in 40K.
Well, somebody might have been up till like 2 in the morning playing video games, so it feels pretty early to me.
What were you playing?
Overwatch 2.
Okay, so I think everybody wants to know how you feel about Overwatch 2 versus Overwatch 1.
I like it a lot. I'm still very bad at it, but I still enjoy it.
Okay, a very small number of people, actually, probably.
Many people are probably confused. Like Overwatch, you can't just Overwatch units until 2 in the morning. People have to be charging you.
Well, I have two friends that I play online games with a lot. I am the youngest of the three of us by quite a margin. So I'm 42. I think Mike is 50, and Chris is 54. I think is the deal. And we are playing online. People will think this is funny. We're playing a game called Shatterline, which is a roguelike co-op first-person shooter. And it's very fun, and I like it a great deal. And we cannot, when the three of us play together, we are significantly worse than when it's three-person parties. We're significantly worse, the three of us together, than two of us in a rando. Mm-hmm. Because there's a very likely chance that the rando is better than us.
Yeah, we'll carry you. Yeah.
And now all of my achievements that I'm trying to do all require me to go do PvP. And so when I go into PvP, it's very bad. Like, I'll see a guy and I'll shoot at him several times, and then he'll turn around and shoot me once and I'll die. Mm-hmm. Because it turns out that at some point in the last 30 years of playing video games, I became bad at reflex response first-person shooter games.
Mm-hmm. Also, probably your ability to see the pixel you have to click on in particular.
Yeah, my vision's okay, I guess. I had a weird thing last night for the first time in my life where I couldn't see my iPad well late last night, and I took my glasses off and I could see it better. So I think we're transitioning into the
bifocals.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's happening. The glasses were actually making it harder to play the video game that I was playing on my iPad at 1 o'clock in the morning, not easier.
Now you're gonna start doing this.
Yeah, I don't
just to find where things are seeable.
I don't want to. So, guys, we have a fairly relaxed day this morning. We were excited to come talk to y'all. Was Chuck's bio list impacted by recent data slate update? What a great question that is. We'll talk about that in a moment. I would like it very much if the people that are watching would ask questions, because we don't actually have enough content for the amount of time we normally cover.
So please help.
So Chuck is going to talk about going undefeated, which is that's a big deal, with his Tzeentch list that is we aren't seeing a lot of that yet. So I've been critical that the meta is stale from the point of view of, if you're playing Tyranids, you kind of know what you're getting. If you're playing Tau, you kind of know what you're getting. Like, a lot more factions are competitive than normal. However, inside those factions, there's not a great deal of variety, is how it feels to those of us that have to tell you guys about tournament lists every Tuesday. So But Chuck's list was a new thing that had not been played and done well. And so he's going to, he says BIFPOD, best in faction.
Yeah, get
branded
the little icon there.
Yeah. So it's going to be really fun to listen to Chuck talk about it. We'll talk about the list, what the different pieces, why the different pieces work together. Chuck will talk through his games at the Turkey Wars.
Yeah.
Is Chase, who ran the event, Canadian?
I don't know.
Why? I just don't understand why Turkey Wars is in October and not November. It's very confusing to me.
Well, all of his stuff is bird themed.
Okay.
So maybe he's just trying to break out, like expand the turkey scenario and trying to he's one of those people who brings in the Christmas decorations before Halloween.
Okay. Are you at all bothered that all of his stuff is bird themed and the other tournament organizer is Jason Bird? Because I find that
no. Okay. As a Tzeentch player, I'm very comfortable with all of the bird themed and named things.
Yeah. A Tzeentch player who doesn't get to play with the Lord of Change though, because not good enough, right?
He's okay. If I'm the Warlord trait in any kind of decent way, he'd be much better. But
how many different Lord of Changes do you own?
4, I think.
Useful.
No, technically 5, but one is the really old version.
The little you kept the little
tiny
metal guy when you sold a bunch of your old stuff.
I think so. I think I still have one of those.
That's great. Okay, so we will talk through the tournament here in just a second, and then we'll also cover questions. There's a lot of questions already from one of our often common listeners whose name I don't know how to say. It was very, very surprised that you have dropped Fabulous Bill.
Oh,
yeah. So let's give you guys just a little bit of an update on stuff. This week in 40K going strong. Actually, all the shows are going strong. TNG and Frontiers are doing great stuff as well. Frontiers is now doing basically half of their show every week rather than their full show every 2 weeks. So that's fun. I actually like devouring their content better that way. So I think that's cool. We have been doing bit reps like we said we would. Some of the other stuff we said we would do, not happening. I'm redoing how that all works to launch Tuesday, hopefully. And we did our first stream game in a long time yesterday. Mm-hmm. We set up some cameras so you could see us when we're talking to you. We got the gimbal working so we could show you up close. And we played Tzeentch Demons versus Ynnari. And not having played a stream game, either of us, in a long time, I would say we both played badly.
Yeah, just right on our faces.
But it was still very fun, and there were still lots to learn.
I appreciate that we were both falling over ourselves so much that the game still came out sort of interesting. When one person does that and the other one is fine, it's kind of just clobbering. But it very much felt like the round 4 to GT to me, where you're just I'm so tired, I can't. What's going on?
Yeah, why am I still here? Why have I made this decision? So we're going to start doing stream games. The fun thing we did yesterday is we had people bet on how it was going to go, and the winner is going to get a T-shirt. I still haven't gone and looked at who won, so I'll do that while Chuck is talking here in a minute. All right, so that's kind of a little bit of a network update, very brief, because sometimes I talk for 30 minutes about that. We do have tentative Charity Hammer dates.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the second weekend in July, which I think is the 12th. I don't have a calendar in front of me, but I'm going to
put it on my calendar right now. I will make sure for you.
Okay. I'm going to try to lock that in soon. Basically, everybody's releasing their event calendars right now. So I'm giving it just a few weeks. I'm not waiting until the last minute, just giving it a few weeks to see where all the events fall. But it looks like that's going to be okay. That's going to be enough weeks before ATC. WTC's in August again. So it looks like that'll be okay. And July is a magical time in the Pacific Northwest. So it's a good time to have everybody out here. That's when our weather is always good. June is a question mark, but July is always good.
So that would be July 8th and 9th. It's the second weekend of July.
Okay. I think that's the weekend. One of the problems we're going to have is that we believe strongly that 10th edition comes out next summer. And we do not want to have Charity Hammer the weekend before we get 10th edition rules. So I don't have great answers for that other than to do it as late in the summer as I can, which is the weekend that we just told you about. So we'll see how that works out for us. Better to be lucky than good, as they like to say.
Always.
And then we're also looking at doing a mini Charity Hammer style event in early January, like when we used to do Charity Hammer. I'm trying to plan an event called the Best in the Pacific Northwest. That is a 8-person 7-round round robin tournament. So the 8 people that have won the most stuff in Washington State come on, and you don't have to worry about getting lucky on win path because everyone plays everybody. So you get to see, we'll have 8 different lists, and you'll get to see every pairing of the 2 combinations of lists over the course of a weekend. I think that'd be really fun. It's certainly good LVO prep.
Yeah, let's get it while our meta is diverse.
Yeah.
I think you could do that, and I don't think any of those people would bring duplicate lists, which is great.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. The 8 people I have selected won't bring the same lists. It's not that. What we're looking at doing is, for those that know us all, it'd be Colin, Steve Trimble, Zach. Those are the 3 people who have won by far the most stuff in the state. Then Naj, Chuck, Hank, who have all won GTs in the past year here. And then who am I forgetting? Oh, and then Lucas, who wins all the time, and Tyler Bortel, who wins all the time. So 8 very, very strong players, and you also get the TNG and the OG guys together. Maybe we can have Mitch run it so that all the BIFPOD people are there.
I like that. It's perfect.
Yeah, we could have him MC it, and then I can just play, that'd be a good way of doing it. So that particular event will not run through the night. There will be sleeping at that one. Anywho, okay. So tell us about Turkey Wars. Was 50 people? Oh no, go ahead.
Let's talk about that data slate first.
Oh yeah, let's talk about the data slate. I shared my thoughts on This Week in Data Slate, which we released on Thursday. So I have already told them all what I think. So why don't you tell them what you think?
So from very specifically from my point of view, I'm happy to see it. Both the list I'm about to talk about and the Fabulous Bio list I've been playing had a lot of trouble into Tyranid Warrior spam. And that just got a lot easier for both of those lists. Being able to win them on 3s instead of 4s is a pretty big deal. Because both of them can easily muster that. So I'm very positive on those changes. When I think about that match in my head, it's still difficult to win, but it is far more within reach, I think. I don't have to get as lucky to try to pull something out.
The zones lost transhuman too, which is a big deal.
Oh, okay.
The zone throps do incredible damage.
I just sort of assumed they were synapse.
They are synapse, but they're not
right, but they're not monster. Gotcha. Yeah. Those are helpful to me. I don't know if that's enough to balance it or not, but I don't think they needed a really heavy hit to get there. So I don't think we need to tank them. So we'll see. I think the change to the Reaper Obliterax is interesting. When I first saw it, I was incredibly excited because I thought they were turning it into just doing mortal wounds, and Abaddon was free of his massive fear of Hive Tyrants, but that's not the case. But interestingly enough, it's not 100% for it to kill Abaddon. They're going to have to send somebody else along with it, hit him with a smite or shoot him, or hit him with the charge mortal strat. Like, they're going to have to put a little extra work to make sure he's dead. Because if you miss, right, if you just do 8 wounds to him, he's going to kill that Hive Tyrant. So
yeah,
that's pretty great. I do think those two things coming together do put. For those of you who could see me, let me just block out the sun a little bit.
Oh, nice. There's a great Simpsons quote. Since the beginning of time, man has yearned to block out the sun. That's a thing that Mr. Burns says.
It's probably true.
And then he builds a giant black thing that gets lifted up on a mechanical arm and blocks the sun for the whole city, so they'll have to use more power from the power plant. That's the genius plan.
That leads us a whole different path. I'm going to go back to the data slate.
Okay, Simpsons is more interesting than the data slate, but that's fine.
Yeah, that's about it. I do think those bring Tyranids down. They're probably in that range of 55% win rate, maybe 60. But we'll be interested to see what happens. I think the Space Marine thing they gave them is, I mean, you don't dislike it because it's a buff, but like it's not making a difference.
No,
the
the Space Marine thing is incredibly minor.
Yeah,
Here, have a few more secondary points each game. Did that fix you?
Yeah. Here,
No.
have 4 more secondaries. Okay.
Yeah, now everything's better.
Yeah. It might bring them up into the 45%, but I doubt it. Like that's not, it's not even close because they're down like low 30s, so that's not going to make the difference. But
it's a nice tiny buff to Blood Angels and Space Wolves. The only 2 factions that do anything.
Yeah, I think that's the case. That lets them have like Blood Angels. They both have incredibly strong secondary games now.
Yeah,
because that is okay if you could make up the points that you miss on the first turn.
Right.
What was the other one? Oh yeah, Silent King doesn't do his own rerolls. I don't know. I sort of expected that the second we realized that they gave him his own rerolls.
I don't think that that's the change they should have made, but I do think that it's nice to have the Silent King be a little bit less reliable.
Yeah,
in his shooting in particular.
It's certainly not what anybody wanted to happen to them. Like it's like everybody's like, "Hey, take care of this Necron problem. They get this secondaries are too strong." And like, okay, well, what about not rerolls on the Silent King? Like, what? No, we didn't care how much they punched.
Well, I actually care a lot about how efficient the shooting is from the Silent King. That's a significant problem for Eldar. He's very good at shooting Eldar.
Yeah.
So I'm all for that. I think that's great. We had Hank on this week in Data Slate, who is of course our most prolific. Is that the word? Prolific AdMech player in the area.
Our AdMech player in the area.
Yeah. And he thinks that despite the fact that removing the nerfs is neat, you need to remember that the points increases that they gave them are all still intact and stuff. And the changes to stratagems that are in the FAQ are still intact. Yeah. So when they say that they're unnerfing them, they're only really unnerfing a set of them. And it actually creates a problem. It actually points out a problem, which is that when they remove stuff from the data slate, it is deeply confusing which rules remain.
Yes.
So
we logged them all in one file in our heads, and they're like, "Okay, we dropped these, but we're not going to tell you which ones we dropped."
Right.
So you have to go back and relearn the entire faction. It's not good communication. Then you still change this.
So Hank doesn't think it's enough. He thinks that in the world, despite the fact that you can now make the incredibly durable Lucius guys again, it's not enough because everybody's planning for Armor of Contempt. So everybody's bringing tons of AP and multi-damage weapons, and the Lucius dudes don't want any part of that. So we'll see if he's right. He might not be. He often is, but he may not be. But that's the change there. And then there's one more big faction change that we're forgetting. AdMech, Nids, Necrons, Harlequins.
Oh yeah, they can't zoom and shoot their pistols from their boats.
Yeah, that's a good change because the speed is the problem there. I would.
It's certainly the worst feel bad, right? When they could just drive up to your army and blast a bunch of stuff, and then okay, your turn.
Yeah, they still get to shoot their shuriken cannons after moving that far, but not being able to just run up and shoot fusion pistols at you from a million miles away is probably a thing that we all don't want them to do.
It also prevents them from doing the thing where they like shoot out to one flank and barely kill something off that flank, and you're like, oh well, I wouldn't pack my army in tight enough. You get a free kill, and you've maneuvered your whole army for the value of it, right? Like,
yeah, I think it's a good change.
Yeah, I haven't played against Harlequins, and I haven't seen AdMech since they got wrecked, so I can't really conceive of those changes, but they don't. Yeah, we'll see. I'll get some games in and see what they're like.
All right, cool. All right, so there's the data slate. I think in general, I think that we are seeing I think that they are focused on 10th edition. They haven't said that to us, but I'm just thinking about it from I've spent my entire adult life talking to owners and managers of businesses. And if I think about what they would do, you've got this team of creatives, right? And the big thing in the tent, the biggest pull in the tent is 10th edition. That's where all the money comes from. That's the big summer launch that makes their year. That's the most important project, not maintenance on the edition people are already playing. So I would suspect that the majority of their creative force is going forward on 10th edition, and that's why the data slate's so minor. The meta is pretty good. They've said that they're using win percentage for the meta changes, which is not what the rest of the community thinks anymore. But fine. I love that they're doing data slates, and I love that they made some minor changes to try to help the things that were bad and the things that were good. But I don't think it's as much as was needed. And I think they missed a bunch of stuff, but the meta is pretty good.
Right.
Even Necrons who didn't get the nerf everyone wanted, even Necrons aren't winning as much as they were a few weeks ago. People are figuring that shit out.
Yeah. Once you understand Necrons, particularly if you get to go first, it gets a lot easier.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think we got kind of a we got a balance patch in a way, and it was some stuff that needed to be addressed for the most part. The Space Marine change is dumb. I don't know what you're doing. It was some stuff that needed to get addressed. And the other thing is people are complaining a lot about secondary changes. And I really think that we're going to get a new mission book right around LVO, and that's going to have rewritten missions.
Yeah, I don't know. Anybody who's expecting points or missions to change in the data slates isn't really paying attention to how things are working now.
Yeah, fair.
Those come out in the book. Everything else comes out in the data slate. They're not going to mix those two.
Right. Okay. So Turkey Wars. 5 round, 50 people, I think is what it was.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay.
No, it's 50. Oh my God. We're going over here.
Okay. Do you want to start by talking about the list you took and why you took the things you did?
Yeah. So I decided that there's a little bit of time left in the year. I'd played a lot of Creations of Bile. While we're still on data slate, sorry. We got a listener request asking how the data slate affected Bile. I don't think it is impacted. It's just becomes better. Tyranny Warriors were one of the harder close combat matchups. Like they're efficient enough through their shooting and their punching that it doesn't they can push through that. And we're mostly swinging strength 6, so we'll be naturally wounding them on 3s. So we basically just got +1 to wound all those warriors. So it's a leg up. I don't know. I don't have enough experience to say it evens out that matchup, but it's certainly a big benefit. I don't think the list that I'm playing would change much. If you look at the list that I play and the list that Zach plays, somewhere in there, in that play space, is probably the correct list to be playing. It's pretty good still. I just got tired of playing it. I recognized a need for variety and strange new weirdness for me. And so that's counterintuitive to my ability to get really good at playing things if I play them over and over again. So I'm choosing fun over.
But you played the new thing and did better than you were doing with Bile.
I know, right? Which is very strange. But we'll talk about it in the games. Yeah, so let's talk about Turkey Wars.
Yeah, tell us about your list.
Yeah, so I decided I wanted to play Tzeentch. He's my favorite Chaos God, and I wanted to see if I could get best in faction Tzeentch. In order to do that, your army has to be Tzeentch faction. If you are all Chaos Demons that are Tzeentch, that doesn't make you Tzeentch faction. That makes you Chaos Demons. By the way, the ITC does it. So in order to be Tzeentch, you have to have two different factions that have the faction keyword Tzeentch. There's a very small matrix. You can have Abaddon as an agent of chaos. He has the mark of Tzeentch, or has the Tzeentch faction keyword. You can have all Tzeentch demons, and you can have Thousand Suns. Demons and Abaddon can both be agents of chaos if you field them appropriately. So you can start to mix from there. I've mostly been working on Thousand Suns with Tzeentch demon lists, but not getting any chances to play. And Thousand Suns are complicated, and mixing Tzeentch demons into that and having them interact was a whole other level of complication. And I hadn't a chance to go to an RTT at one of my favorite stores that hadn't been running them for a long time. And so I needed an army to play real quick. So I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to do demons with Abaddon. What do I bring? And as I started looking at just being pure Tzeentch, there are basically only a few data slates that really stuck out as being worth my time. Unsurprisingly, Flamers are quite amazing. So I said, sure, I'll take 15. I don't want to worry about weird coherency, so I will limit myself and not go to a full 18.
Also Blast. There's a lot of D3 weapon blasts in the game.
That's true. Yeah, and most of those weapons would be relatively decent into them.
Yeah, it made a big difference with the D cannons when we played yesterday. That you had 5s instead of 6s.
Yeah,
because I would have been shooting 9 shots, right, instead of like 5 or 6.
Right, which it probably kills at least the guy that I would have had on there anyway. Right.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, well, what else? What else do we need? And I started by putting in 3 units of blue horrors, then grabbing a couple of heralds to buff my stuff. And I was okay. I have some points left over, and I was manipulating points around, and I decided I need a Bellicor because I've got Abaddon already. Why shouldn't I just be completely Mimi and bring all the biggest, most well-known characters? And then I realized that if you add up Bellicor's points costs and 3 Soul Grinders, it is 990 points. Which is you can deep strike 1,000 points. It's like, okay, this is interesting. So I can take these 4 big monsters, and in matchups where I don't want my monsters on the table because somebody's going to shoot them off, I can deep strike them. And in games where people are all close combat, I can put them on the table and they can start shooting from the beginning, and they can block for my flamers, or vice versa. And as this actually started to make more and more sense the more I started to think it through. So that's basically the list. It's Bellicor, a Herald on a Disc, a Herald on a Chariot, 10 blues, 15 flamers, 3 Soul Grinders, and Abaddon. It's all pretty elite.
You think?
Yeah. Since then, I've traded the 2 Heralds for a Herald on Foot and a Demon Prince, giving me 1 more close combat option. I think it's a minor upgrade. It's not massive. You could go either way, but I like the Prince, so I'm going to probably stick with that.
So just a little bit on Turkey Wars. We have a number of places running events regularly now in our state. And down by the Olympia area, there's a great guy named Chase who runs events down there, and he's been running them like crazy, and they all are getting good amounts of people. So big shout out to him for sure.
Building a whole nother detachment of Pacific Northwest people, which is always good to have that variety come into the meta like that.
Right, and just as a side tangent, there's a guy in Portland who's starting big events there, Chuck, who I've been talking to, and they had him on TNG yesterday to talk about building community because he's done a lot already and he's really committed. And so they have a tournament in March that we'll be advertising on the network that's at an event center and the whole thing in Portland. And,
excellent.
Portland's great. It's Portland. Interestingly, Jason over on the peninsula, I'm not convinced that he's actually closer to me than Portland is. So, yeah, I think I'm about 3 hours either way.
Yeah, it's about the same.
So I don't think it matters to me, but Portland's a fun city to go have a tournament in. So I'm glad that they're going to be doing events again, and that'll be especially fun because the TNG guys are in Portland. So we'll have boots on the ground coverage of those events. Anywho, so what I love about this story, Chuck, is that you made a thing for an RTT that went 8-0 at your first 8 tournament games.
Yeah.
Why do you? Before we talk about the games, talk about you're a 4-1, 3-2 guy typically. So, what is the power of this list?
So the power of this list really is the intense durability. You imagine I go from everything is hiding behind ruins, poking around, holding some objectives, and then it's time for the Soul Grinders to land. So I land 3 Soul Grinders, probably within charge range of you, and I jump all these Flamers out. Flamers moving 12 and then going D6 more, and then flaming 12 from there. Like they start participating from very far away very quickly, right? So all of that shows up at once. The Soul Grinders are charging into you, restricting your movement and blocking for the Flamers. So the Flamers are going to get more than 1 round of doing their job. The
Soul Grinders are good at shooting and punching, for those that don't know.
Yeah, let's talk about them because let's go through some stats real quick so that people understand them.
Okay.
They're T8 16 wounds, and with them being Tzeentch, they have 4 up in range and in combat for saves.
Ooh.
So very durable, right? Like it's going to people will kill them, but it will take them time. And I'm not giving them a lot of time, right? Shooting wise, they have a 36-inch range D6 strength 8 AP2 3 damage gun that's blast. and then they have 6 shots that are strength 7, AP 1, 2 damage.
Oh man, did you get to shoot that gun into the Chaos Terminator bricks at all? I guess AP2
No,
feels bad.
I didn't have to go into Terminators.
Okay.
My Mortal Wound output is what would really scare them.
Yeah.
I could do a lot of damage. I could also target their casters. So
they don't like that.
No, they don't like that. Those guys dying is a pretty big deal. But that's okay shooting, right? And then they have okay punch. They get to swing 5 times with a strength 16 AP3 D6 damage weapon. It's all right, can do. And then they have 4 more swings with I think it's a strength 12 or strength 8 or something, AP2 2 damage. So, but they get 9 total swings out of all of that. And as they degrade,
you told me it was strength 16 yesterday.
Yeah, the main attack is strength 16.
Oh, okay. All right.
But it's a whole bunch of attacks. That second set is Malefic as well, which comes up quite a bit. Their being damage 2 is a lot less lessened when things that are -1 damage don't get to -1 damage it.
Mm-hmm.
Feels pretty nice.
You also, because of your excuse me, because of your -2 leadership auras, you can regularly bring them in and shoot them and still make a charge with them on the turn they come in.
Oh yeah, I'm very accustomed to shooting back into your army. Often what I do is I come down and I try to shoot some sort of tank or unit that could actually put damage on the Soul Grinders, and then probably charge chaff that you put out in front, because most people are screening and they don't want me charging into good things. But if they give me something good, I will also charge that.
Okay. So let's talk about the GT. I'll tell you what. I'll tell you about the people you played.
Well, I also want to mention. So they're doing player placed,
mm-hmm.
And it was pretty healthy. I would say 5 to 6 pieces to place at each table, depending on the size of those pieces. You have to be familiar with it. It's the stuff that Jason brings to most events for people to use. So I think terrain was pretty healthy. We were playing with the bottom floor line of sight blocked. That doesn't have a huge impact on me. It does mean the flamers get to be a little bit more aggressive, right? Because they can be right up against the wall and then jump out from there.
Mm-hmm.
So it adds a little bit of range on that. Otherwise, it doesn't matter a ton.
Okay.
Yeah. So round 1.
You played Donald Plummer.
Yeah.
Who you had just played at the RTT.
And in fact, had played no games in between. So I at the RTT, Donald and I were on the top table together. And then we got paired into this first round. We both had a good laugh. He looked for a way out, and then we played our game.
He was playing Tau.
Yeah, he's playing Tau. Run that list down.
Yeah, he's got 2 big units of crisis suits, and then he's got a Riptide, 2 bombers, and 3 suit commanders, it looks like. One of which is Farsight.
Yeah, Farsight. Then he's got the Flame Gauntlet guy, and then he's got a guy I think he just mostly shoots and pops around and does the aerospace points thing. And
then a little bit of Crute to do stuff, do things.
So his general game plan for his list is to shoot you, obviously. But he's also definitely on the Cayenne plan, where he's going to score all of his points at the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a good game plan for my army, we have discovered. Because let's just walk through. So turn 1, I hide everything I have, and I deep strike my 4 big monsters, right? Per plan. I went first. I moved up into safe locations that I had built myself and waited. He could basically not do anything but screen. So he screened. He put out 2 Crute to secure basically his entire deployment zone as his own space, so he had room to fall back later. Soul Grinders land. They shoot past, I'm going to be able to find angles because I get to put them wherever I want. I shoot past them into crisis suits in a forest. Between that and some 1 unit of flamers that got up there and a little bit of psychic, I wipe out that whole unit of crisis suits. Then I charge into all those Crute and kill all of them. And I use all of that movement charge. I move very close to him. So he gets 1 turn minus 1 unit of crisis suits to try to deal with 3 Soul Grinders. I think he killed 2 of them, if I remember properly. But then I charged into him again, and then again, all 15 flamers are still intact at this point, so they jump forward and go again, and he's basically done. On turn 3, I cleaned him up. This is almost exactly how it looked at the RTT as well. It's just this particular matchup, the Tau, I'm not really sure what they should do. we'd obviously played it twice and thought through. So
your army's much easier to punch than it is to shoot.
Yeah, and I give such a very narrow window.
Yeah,
for you to do it in. Is I think shooting armies have a real problem with this list.
Yeah, I had a turn yesterday against you with Genestealer Cult with a gun, with a very efficient Genestealer Cult shooting army, and almost the entire army shot your 2 units of flamers that I killed 9 of 10.
Yeah,
but like with everything, I built exactly the way I wanted it with +1, like with everything I could do. Yeah. I killed, what is that, 175? No, 225 points of flamers.
Oh my gosh. I wish I could buy more than 3 units. They're so gross.
It is really gross, yeah. And Tau have to shoot. They can't get into the combat and wipe off the flamers with their when they have a 6-up save. Like, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we knew what it was going into it. Him and I would like to play it again where I've gone first both times. And I think if he goes first and puts the gas on and goes for it, then maybe he makes it harder for me. But I suspect that just makes the score more narrow. My win was 94-32 here. Like it is an aggressive blowout. He was dead. There was nothing. There were no Tau on turns 4 and 5. I was just collecting points.
Okay. All right. So then you played Tyler Bortel from TNG.
Yeah, heard of that guy.
You've played him a number of times in tournament, I would imagine.
Yeah, a few.
So he is playing Behemoth to do the super durability nits list. And he's got a Neurothrope, Tyrant, Gargoyles, 2 units of 3 Tyranid Warriors to do stuff. Death Leaper, who is like Tyler's favorite thing in the army. 2 units of 6 Tyrant Guard. 2 units of 5 Tyrant Guard. Excuse me. 3 Venom Throps, 5 Raveners, 3 Biovores. Then a Genestealer Cult detachment with a Magus. 2 units of do stuff acolytes. 1 big unit of beat stuff up with our rock drills. And then a Spore Assist to put a bunch of mines on the table to put mortals on next.
So let's start from the top on this one. We were playing Tear Down Their Icons. So we're kind of, there's a lot of space between us. And he has much more ability to do the actions for the mission. So I'm in kind of a rough spot. Also, just in general, I've lots of respect for Tyranids. They seem incredibly strong. His army is mostly based around that Hive Tyrant and Death Leaper. Mm-hmm. Right? He's going to take space with Death Leaper that normally that makes it very difficult for you to get to undeath Leaper. And then the Hive Tyrant is just going to scare everybody away from a particular space. On top of that, he's generating the Spore Mines from the Spore Assist, and then the 3 Biovores are doing more Spore Mines. So he's filling one space of the table with Spore Mines. The Hive Tyrant is threatening another, and Death Leaper is being incredibly hard to unseat and obsecking another. So it's like you have to solve 3 different problems to get through that game. What I did is I made my army into a giant hammer and just started smashing into the Death Leaper problem. And that seemed to work just fine. I sent the Psychers and I think 1 Soul Grinder and the Flamers after Death Leaper and the Tyrant Guard, all like in one big pile. And just through weight of fire, I pulled them down. I think what you mentioned, I want to bring up, they basically get double cover.
Yeah.
So they're on a 0-up save. So when Flamers shoot at those guys standing in cover, I'm giving them a 1-up. And he kind of laughed it off when I said it to start with, but I'm like, that's fine. I have enough shooting. I'm just going to push you. I think people can't really understand how ridiculous Flamers are. Just like all 3 of them will shoot at you, and your unit will dissipate over time. And then if I send Abaddon in there, obviously you're gone. Or if the Bellicor comes around, so I did that. But then I also put the Soul Grinders on the other side and shot downstream and killed his Gargoyles. This is really disappointing for him because he's on R&D and behind enemy lines, and so he was planning to use them to do that later. And my army doesn't have any OBSEC in it. Those blues that I have, so the rule specifically says they never gain OBSEC. So I sort of target anybody's OBSEC so that they can't just tag all my points. So I think you can actually just beat my army by saying, by moving OBSEC into locations and being like, I've touched all of your points. You get 0 primary again.
Yeah.
That's a massive weakness, so I try to limit that weakness. So I'm doing this. Abaddon's over in that corner, smashing up Death Leaper and stuff, and the Hive Tyrant eventually says, okay, I'm going to go over there and kill you. I don't care that you're fat-based bile this turn. I'm taking you down. And he does. He did 8 wounds to him, and then I think he had a tail or something that finished him. But it was very close to him not actually killing Abaddon. Abaddon then killed him in return.
Which is a trade that you probably make, right?
I don't have a choice.
I know, but if the game started out and he said, you don't play with Abaddon, I won't play with my Tyrant, you'd say, that's great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have the same thing with when I play against Nids with the Incarn, with the Inari, I have the same math. I will YOLO the Incarn into the Tyrant and have them kill each other, because the Tyrant being gone is a much bigger deal for him than the Incarn being gone is for me.
Yeah. The thing I've learned to do is you position Abaddon so that he can't be charged by the Tyrant until he finds a target. Then you make him bile, you run and you kill that target. And the distance you get by running in and killing that target means that if they don't accept your trade with their fight on death, then you can go ahead and charge something else and kill that. Mm-hmm. Or if they screw up, you could charge the Hive Tyrant themselves, but that seems unlikely. Mm-hmm. But you can at least get 2 units out before they come for him.
Right.
But that's destined to happen. So just try to use it, get the most you can out of him before he's gone. But we traded those pieces, and at that point, other than Spore Mines, which he's been generating 10 a turn, he's very light on the ground. He's having trouble holding objectives because I've done so much damage to his Tyranid Warriors get picked up really easy by the Soul Grinder's cannon, right? It's doing damage 3, strength 8. I picked up all the little things that he was planning to do fancy things with, because I know Tyler. I know him very well as a player. He's going to do fancy things. He's going to trick me. So if I just kill all of his little tricksy things and reduce the number of units he has, he'll have less ability to handle it.
Right. That's how I was telling. We were talking yesterday, you and I, about that's how I play against Chaos Space Marines. Mm-hmm. It's if you kill all of their stuff, all their OBSEC and their things that do things, then the things that have to smash you have to hold objectives.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we get to that point, and I with this heroic, maybe dumb charge, I send Be'lakor in through a gap in the Spore Mines, where he still triggers a bunch of the Spore Mines on his way, to then fight some Venom Thropes. So he takes a bunch of mortal wounds going through Spore Mines, then hits the Venom Thropes, takes a mortal wound, and fights last. They do some more wounds to him. They put him at 1. And then he kills the 3 Venom Thropes.
Wow.
But what that does is that means that he's got some Biovores and the Spore Assist in the back, and Spore Mines. So then I can back away, touch objectives, Spore Mines come running at me, and they kill people, but he's not holding enough anymore. And so I can retreat from the game and just win.
Okay.
That was pretty much that game. It was very close. 72-51 score-wise doesn't really show. There was a couple of tipping points that if they tipped the other way, I feel like a very, very losable game for me. This was just definitely I got lucky today and things worked out for me.
You played Sean Bursek third. I don't know Sean, I don't think.
I didn't know Sean either. I think he's pretty new to the field.
Okay. And he was playing pretty much the Leviathan competitive list.
I was actually really happy to see that, because at this point I'm why does this list keep why does my army continue to win? How do I would like to get some experience against the hardest thing, and this is, I think if somebody said what's the hardest list in the game, it would be this one. Well,
depending on what you're playing, the stuff you've been playing, I think that's certainly the case. Yeah. For me, the Necron meta list is harder, but whatever. So this is 3 big units of Tyranid Warriors, Venom Thropes, Tyrant Guard, 2 Harpies, 1 unit of Zoanthropes, Neurothrop, Broodlord, Hive Tyrant. Very standard Leviathan.
So in this game, we're playing secure sanctuaries. I'm going to go through secondaries because they're actually pretty relevant to this one. I take obviously no prisoners because he's giving up a ton of that. Despoil Reality and Reality Rebels. I also take he takes Bring It Down, Banners, and Warp Ritual. The Warp Ritual doesn't end up working out well for him He gets only 7 points out of it. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that the stratagem that Bellicor has to 4-up deny and the stratagem that Abaddon has to 4-up deny don't have the same name.
Oh, jeez.
So had I understood that, it would have been even worse. In fact, it probably would have warned him off of it, and he would have played a different secondary. But I didn't learn that until after this event was over. So I thought that was very interesting. It really adds a lot of psychic deny to the list. It basically says no psychic actions against me. So in this game, this is actually my first time playing against Harpies. I had seen what they've done. I've studied what they do, but I got to experience it, and I do not like it.
No, they're jerks.
I took my opponent isn't going to shoot at me stance, even though I know he's going to. I didn't feel comfortable deep striking all of that stuff and bringing it in later. Tyranids either have like a 5 leadership or a 10. And if he does a good job of nesting those 10 leadership characters in with his 5s, I will be deep striking very far away. And so I basically said, I'm willing to allow him to kill a soul grinder in order to have 2 soul grinders to start with. And he did go first, and he flew over them with the Harpies and then shot at them and killed a soul grinder fairly easily. Put some damage on another one. But that meant they were right up in my army, and Bellicor was standing very centrally. So he was like, I'm going to kill one for sure, right? The Heralds have a pick that says a unit of horrors gets 6s to hit, auto wound. So I popped that on the blues and shot at the Harpy and did like 3 damage to it. And then the next turn, the other Harpy flew away, but he flew over to where the blues were, and they shot and did like another 4. And they just kept doing ridiculous damage to Harpies. This is great.
You didn't shoot the other Harpy?
The one of them came in really tight, and the other one was far away.
Okay. But you had 2 more soul grinders left, so I just didn't know why you didn't shoot the one the Bellicor wasn't going after.
I didn't think I would bring it down, and I needed to get started on warriors because they're coming right at me.
Okay.
And he's got a 9 and 2 5s. Like that's a lot of work.
Okay.
So I definitely went for the present threat. We basically skirmished a little bit. I did a little bit of damage. I think I killed the 5-man that was in front. And then that Harpy, and then there was some other small thing I picked up. I don't remember what it was. I thought, but not terribly relevant. But he put enough pressure on me that I wasn't able to do any of my display of reality actions. And I knew immediately that was a big problem, because also you don't table this army. So the 2 ways Display Reality works is you jump on it to begin with and you get it real quick before your opponent's able to reach you, or you table your opponent and you do the actions after they're gone. And so that Display Reality was a very bad pick into this army because it's aggressive and durable. I'm never going to get a chance to actually do those actions. Mm-hmm. And I knew basically at that point I went through and just dashed out my scoreboard. I was like, this is going to be a 0. I've screwed up. What can I do? Right. Mm-hmm. As far as my planning goes. So I charge into him. He charges into me. I make a massive mistake. I forgot about the -1 damage strat. So I've engineered this scenario where that 9 Terminator Terminated Warriors are come up, and I send Abaddon in there because he's damage 3 and there are 3 wounds. I'm like, this is going to be great. And he spins the strat, and I'm like, oh, and that makes you kill half as much as you want. And then Abaddon also is like, well, I'm going to kind of fumble as well. So I'm going to only kill a few. He puts some damage on him, and we continue to scrum in the middle, and then the soul grinders go in, and between that and more Abaddon and him running out of CP, we managed to kill off the 9, but he also killed basically my army. So I have my trash left over, and he has one the psychic little character, Neurothrope, and 5 warriors, and he chooses to charge off and kill my Herald, who's on an objective, trying to do Display Reality. And I basically did that as a bait move. Like it's a lot of points. I forced him to turn warriors away from the center, and then I charged everything into the center, and did a bunch of fighting there. He finishes his turn. I do the math. he's at 64 points, and I'm at like, I think it was 57. So I basically didn't. I could back away, hold enough objectives, and do some shenanigans to win it 67 to 64. If I had just played for the most points, I could have charged my last soul grinder into his soul grinder on like 4. I could charge that into his guy in the center and try to get the end of game. You would get like 5 points if you control the center objective on the primary. So I could have gotten a much higher score, but if that guy swings and misses and then his guy kills my soul grinder, I lose the game. So I'm very proud of myself for doing the math and then taking the passive approach of like, I'm going to lock this win in, because a 3-point win is basically nothing, right? Like that is we're right on top of each other.
That's a 10-10 in team play.
Yeah. So again, I think in this case a little bit, not I want to play here skill. It's like experience. I think I've played tournaments since before this guy was born, and so I think he was distracted by like, oh, look how well I'm doing, and I was like, okay, I've done this. I've been here before, so I was able to focus on like, here are all the vectors for all the points, and so I pulled out a better plan on that last turn. But I'd say we were probably equal up until that very point, which is it's kind of exciting. I love games like that, but man, it's like,
and that was basically your final, honestly. Looking at how rounds 4 and 5 go, which we're about to talk about, that was really your big game.
That was by far the hardest game I played last weekend, which is not saying anything poor about the other games I played, but like that list is hard.
Yeah,
and it was very difficult to do damage to it. So
right. Before we continue to day 2 for Chuck, I do want to remind everybody of a couple things. One is, if you enjoy us and you want to spend more time with us, you can do that in our Discord. You can join it from one of 2 different ways. You can go to patreon.com/best in tabletop. And you can go there and you can pay us $10 a month, and that gets you access to our Discord, where there is a crazy amount of talking going on all the time. Also games. There's a fantasy football league happening. There's a Blood Bowl league going on. We talk about Marvel Crisis Protocol. We talk about movies and video games and pets and adulting, and there's a lot going on in there. So if you'd like to spend more time with the Best in Tabletop Network crew, that's where you can find us. We also make a lot more content than you see. There is content on our YouTube under our members only area. A lot of it is our bit reps. We have a lot of bit reps under there and some other stuff. Hank's list corners there. Lots of stuff's in there. And you can get to that from our YouTube and by clicking on join. And there's an option there for $15 a month that lets you get both the Discord and support us on YouTube. You get everything that we do with no exceptions. So that's available too. If you don't want to do any of that, but you'd still like to support us, you can tell people about us. If you don't want to do that, you can go to our store at our website and you can buy merchandise that allows people to see that you support us. All right. Additionally, when we're done here talking about Chuck's last 2 games, we'll have some time to take some audience questions. So people that are listening live, if you have anything you'd like to ask us about, it does not need to be 40K related. However, if we don't know how to answer it, we won't. And it can be about anything you'd like, about the data slate, about 40K, about one of the lists we play, whatever you'd like. Just let us know. Okay. So you get up the next morning. You are one of the 4 undefeateds. And Naj is the top with 7 million points.
Let me tell you my special trick. I got like 7 hours of sleep that night. I don't sleep when I've gone 3-0. But apparently I'm into it. I was just like, I'm going to get full sleep. I'm going to feel rested and awake and ready to go. And it was wonderful.
And then you played James Lee. And he had the Custodes. He had the Emperor's Chosen Custodes. And he had, let's see, the Knight Centura. I don't know who that is.
That's I believe that's the sister character.
Okay. Very inexpensive, it looks like.
Yeah, 50 points or so.
Shield Captain on jet bike, 1 unit of 3, 2 units of spear custodian guard, 1 unit of 4 prosecutors, 2 venerable contemptor dreadnoughts, 2 units of 3 Veritas Praetors, and 3 Caladius grav tanks. My guess is that this army did not kill you quick enough.
Well, Sunny. So James and I had played at Harbor Heresy back in September, and he's playing basically the same list. He might have made some slight modifications, but the idea was basically the same. And I played him with Bile, and it sort of identified in that game that he's playing a very good shooting. Like all those tanks are pretty decent shooting, and then he's got guns from all those guys, but then it's basically a counter charge. So if you just don't go into the counter charge, he doesn't really have what it takes. So you have to be very careful. With Bile, it was I'd send one thing in, get a kill, and then he'd have to counter charge me, and then he would die for that, right? In this game, I treated him like a shooting army. I put all of my big monsters in Deep Strike, and I took Despoil Reality and Warp Ritual and Reality Rebels, and I was like, I'm just going to exist and get points, and you're going to have trouble catching up with me. And then when you do anything to try to catch up, 3 Soul Grinders and Bellicor are going to arrive and just wreck you for it. He spent a lot of time screening out the tanks, but when it was time, I dropped everything in. All 3 Soul Grinders were able to kill one of the tanks with shooting, and then they charged into the little Foot Warrior units. We're able to pick them up, and then Bellicor made a charge into the other ones. I rolled like a just hard rolled an 11 or something to make a charge, killed off a squad of 3, and Fight Lass is his captain who was over there. And at that point, it's just like, okay, like what do you like? I've already removed so much of your ground presence. Your 2 tanks are going to shoot at me, but most of it was strength 7. So it's bad into Bellicor and it's bad into the Soul Grinders. It's shooting, so it's naturally bad into the Flamers. I was immediately able to remove his ability to play against me. I think he should have actually screened with the tanks because they turned out to be not valuable into me. So over the course of the game, I picked up his pieces pretty quickly. I won the game 94-42. What was really astonishing to me in the whole thing is I took so few casualties because he could just not muster a lot of damage against me. And that's the same way I felt with the Tau game, right? It's just like if you're relying on shooting to kill me, it's not going to work. And so I think that's the core of the Tzeentch Demons being deal, right? It's just like shooting won't work to finish me. You have to do a close combat solution. So if you build your list to be Tzeentch Demons and something that prevents close combat from being a good solution against you, I think you have a good list, which is I think the core of what I have.
And then round 5. You thought, well, I've played everything else.
Yeah. What could possibly be good enough to stop me?
Maybe the mirror.
Yeah.
So this is is this also a Tzeentch list?
I don't think so. I think it's all Tzeentch Demons.
So it's got Fate Skimmer, Bellicor, a Bloodthirster, a Lord of Change. So it's just Chaos Demons.
Yeah.
2 units of Blue Horrors, a unit of Pink Horrors, and then the Exalted Flamer, 2 units of 5 Flamers, and a unit of 3 Flamers.
There's a Bloodthirster in there somewhere.
There is. I said that.
Okay, you did? Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, so and that's when I said it's Chaos Demons because it has a Bloodthirster in it.
Yeah. So this is a pretty good list. I think mine is slightly better because I have more activations for doing damage, right? He can fire off the 3 Flamers. He can do psychic powers with the Lord of Change, and he can attack something with the Bloodthirster. I have Abaddon, Bellicor, 3 times to shoot with the Soul Grinders, and 3 times to punch with the Soul Grinders. So I'm way ahead on just number of things I get to do, and I pushed that. I eliminated units when I could.
Did you have Flamers killing Flamers in this game?
Oh, we had Flamers shooting Flamers, then we had Flamers stuck in combat with each other. I pulled this one maneuver where at turn 4, I had 2 units of my Flamers in combat with one of his units of Flamers, and we finally did enough damage that one of my Flamer units got out of the combat. So on turn 5, I could do Despoil Realities to get the last of that. By maneuvering my unit, like it took me, I think, 3 combats to maneuver my unit around in such a way that he wouldn't be able to pile into my unit. We've a lot of like, I'm coming.
Yeah, what if I go over here? Oh, I'm over here now.
You're not what? Oh, I removed this guy as a casualty. Now I'm free. It was a very strange game in that regard. I think the thing that got it for me is I took Despoil Reality. And on the first turn, I got to go first. I ran Bellicor onto the center objective, and I put the Herald right behind him and started to spoil reality there. And then because we're playing the Scouring, the 2 objectives that are near your deployment zone are not in your deployment zone.
Right.
So I moved Flamers up behind walls and just spoiled reality there as well. So he couldn't shift Bellicor. He brought him down to like 6, right? But he's still there, and there's nothing you can do about the guy behind him. And so I score 12 on Despoil Reality right there.
Wow.
And then I go and I get like the hero turn that he did not mean you to have. I did a bunch of mortal wounds. All of my powers went off. Like even my smite was a super smite, and I just wrecked all the blues and pinks. What's important about that is they only split when you attack them, not when you smite them. They're like Necrons.
Right.
So I pushed them way down, and then Bellicor went in and finished the pinks to exactly the last man. So he never got any sort of splits whatsoever. And that clears his screen and puts Bellicor right up in his business. And then there's a bunch of my guys like right behind a wall getting ready to jump in on him some more. And I think at that point I looked at the game and was like, okay, this is just business at this point. This is done. That was the game ended on 2. And then we just, worked out how it finished after that. He took Assassinate, which I think is an interesting angle. He was definitely trying to take out my my little guys and leave the Soul Grinders without killing them. I think if we played the game again, he'd just take big game because you can't ignore the Soul Grinders. They won't be ignored. They need attention. They're gonna take it if they don't. They're not giving it. So
yeah. If you want more information, then we're not done talking about the tournament. But if you want more on Chuck's list, on our YouTube, you can find a stream game. Look at live broadcasts from yesterday. Chuck and I played a game of Ynnari and Tzeentch where we really talk through what's happening and really go deep. Or we're going to have a bit rep coming out this week of Genestealer Cult versus Tzeentch, which was, I think, a more interesting. They were both good games, but I think the Tzeentch Genestealer Cult matchup was more interesting because I kind of didn't understand your army. You kind of didn't understand my army, and we were kind of figuring it out together, which I thought was good. Also, Genestealer Cult is a gun army, which is what Chuck's strength is. So that was really interesting. I look forward to people seeing that. So you ended the tournament undefeated, only one of 2 people to be undefeated. And let me just look here at how many points Naj was ahead of you. Naj from TNG got first place with Necrons. I'm sure he talked about that on his show yesterday, if you want to find that. So Naj went 100, 100, 97, 89, 100. I'm going to go find out who he got 87 against. Because that's clearly the really big, the really hard game. It's the one where he only
I'm going to guess it's some sort of aggressive close combat.
Well, it's Max, who's a good player.
Oh,
and
he's playing the Grey Knights,
another
right?
person that's putting fluff in there.
It's Grey Knights.
Yeah, that's surprising that's the one that played him so close. Neat. So Naj got 486 points over 5 rounds, and Chuck got 421 points over 5 rounds. 5 rounds.
Nearly had him.
And
this
then
close.
Both the Nurgle list and the Death Guard list, which are incredibly similar to each other, went 3rd and 4th. And then Knights Renegades in 5th, and then Knights Renegades in 6th as well. So you've got Necron, Tzeentch, Death Guard, Nurgle, Knights Renegade, Knight Renegades is the top 6, which is kind of funny. That's Lucas also from TNG in the 6th there. All of the teams are wrong, so there was
a whole check-in issue.
Yeah, Tyler and Lucas and Naj don't have the right team, and neither do you. So we don't right now. Best of Tabletop's not getting any points for the event
when it should get it done. Yeah.
So maybe you guys want to talk to Chase, who's literally watching the show live right now.
I don't think Chase, because we can email Frontline though.
Oh, because it's already been submitted.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We will riff for a few minutes while the audience asks any questions they might have. But what I'm curious to hear about is, we do have a big topic to cover still, and Chase is even here to talk to comment if we want. So let's talk about base sizes on the Soul Grinders, Chuck.
Yeah. So the GW website lists the base size as the 100 millimeter to 150 millimeter. That's the Orc Buggy base. That's sort of a weird.
Yeah, it's like a big oval.
Yeah, it's
like a stretched oval.
Yeah, super weird. I'd been playing them without bases and heard that they had bases on them. So I was like, oh, cool. That would be nice because there's a lot of weird questions that come up.
Mm-hmm. When something doesn't have a base, like the big Tyranid thing.
Yeah.
The big Tyranid thing where it only touches.
Oh, yeah. It touches the table in like 4 little points.
4 little points. It's like, what? There's no rules for how this works.
Yeah. It has caused my opponents to feel, to have questions or to feel awkward in our game. So I was like, oh, I put them on bases. Great. I'll go look, and I found the base size and I put them on the bases. So I'm playing them on the official GW base size, but I have also heard that I am incorrect in this. And people have been able to pull, it's 160 millimeter round, which is like, is massive. It's almost objective marker sized. Like, yeah, it's ridiculous. So I submitted my models to Chase and asked for, that they were correct. And he said they were. I feel a little bad about that because if I had known there was a controversy there, I would have pointed that controversy out to him. Right. I just sort of like, here's my models. I was actually just, they're crazy conversions. I wanted to make sure that was cool. And
I really like the Robo Centaur, by the way.
Yeah. He's by far the favorite one.
Yeah.
I basically, if you're going to try the list, make sure with your TO first. I think on the 160 millimeter rounds, if you're playing player placed, that's larger than 6 inches across, so they can't move between 2 buildings. Like, your opponent will just be able to make your life miserable. And Soul Grinders are okay shooting, but if all they're doing is shooting, they're not participating enough.
If I had thought about it, when I placed terrain, I put some terrain in the middle of the table, which wasn't right, but if I had put all of my terrain in my deployment zone as 4 inches apart from each other, it would have been much better against you because of the way they work.
Yeah, you could guarantee that I would not be able to participate in at least a third of the table.
Yeah, with the Soul Grinders.
You could do probably even better. And then what am I going to ship Bellicor and Abaddon into there, and everybody else just stays outside and says, if you come out of that hole that we sent them in, we're going to get you.
I'm not sure that we said this, so I'm going to just, if you said this, I'll say it again. When you buy it, it comes with the round.
That's the confusion. Somebody actually went and bought one and sent me a picture of like, this is what came with it.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, I don't know what the right answer is or how to do that.
Right.
I dearly love the list and would love to play it again, but like, I don't think I love it with those bases. When we played our games yesterday, I kept that in mind and tried to play it like it was on that size base, and it made it much more difficult to maneuver. Like, going around the edge of a building, you lose many, many inches. You lose like a whole turn going around a building. On top of not being able to go, physically can't go to places. It's like a pretty negative hit.
Yeah. So because of that, you're going to pivot to rubrics?
Yeah, I think I'll go to rubrics and Tzeentch Demons.
Yeah.
It's either that or Abaddon in Thousand Suns. Those are both pretty decent, but Flamers are so unbelievably broken right now that I'm just going to ride that train.
Right. Okay. But you love it. You loved the list. You had a great time playing.
Yeah, it's really fun. I honestly think it's very close to the kind of list that I would like to be playing. I'll be looking at it as an archetype. I've already spent a bunch of time looking at well, what about Leviathans, and trying to mimic some of that value. It's just, you can't really, with the way the demons work, where they deep strike in so close. It's very specific. So.
Yeah, and the Soul Grinders are undercosted if they're on the bases that you used. I would say they're not enough points, and so what they're doing for those points is a really big deal in the list.
Yeah, and the Flamers are the same way, right? There's nothing in. That's one of the things we didn't talk about. That list, there's nothing in there that isn't pushed. Even the Blues, 70.10 troop unit with a 4-up invuln versus shooting is great. Even the dumbest thing is actually very good.
Right.
And that's definitely a big part of what's making the list run.
Well, we have some questions to answer.
All right.
So first up is Paul Botelho. Sure. Paul B. If GW asked y'all to, how would you make Marines more durable without using the hated Armor of Contempt? Armor of Contempt's so weird because it is annoying. Like, first of all, I don't think Marines are too good, and I certainly don't have a hard time killing them when I play them with my top tier BS. But Armor of Contempt does feel bad when you're playing against them. It's really weird to have a rule that isn't good enough that is also frustrating. So I think that's it's really interesting how much people hate Armor of Contempt. You talked about that when we were playing yesterday, Chuck. You're like,
well, at its core, it requires that you do another math problem every time you resolve an attack.
Yeah.
I also think people try to resolve it as a whole string as opposed to like solve one problem at a time. I think a lot of people go like, okay, well, you're AP3, I'm ignoring one of that, and my armor's this, so like try to figure out the answer. And be like, no, like your AP3, I'm going to turn that into 2. What does 2 do to my armor? But that's a whole different. I think people process it wrong, but it does. It adds a math problem to every interaction.
Yep.
And then the skew of how hard it hits AP1 to how hard it hits like AP3 is like very drastic.
Mm-hmm.
And then you combine, 2+ armor saves and cover saves, and it's all kinds of really bad.
And there's a bunch of armies that just can't deal with it.
No. And there's a lot of things in the game, or a lot of things that aren't in the game because they can't deal with Armor of Contempt, which I think is really weird when you consider how little Armor of Contempt you actually play against.
Right.
Yeah. Because really right now, Chaos Space Marines is the only thing they're using it that I respect.
I think that his name rhymes with Jello, he says.
The last name?
So it's Paul Botello. So I'm actually having a hard time because I have an ex-girlfriend whose name is similar but pronounced differently. So that's what my brain keeps wanting to pronounce it as. Anywho, I think Armor of Contempt is really interesting because it is very thematic that the Marines have really good armor, right? That's very thematic. But what if the army was just +1 toughness? Mm-hmm. They seem wildly comfortable with letting an entire subfaction of dwarfs be +1 toughness. So why not just make Armor of Contempt +1 toughness? Because there's a lot of strength 4 shooting in the game. There's some strength 5. There's a lot of strength 5 close combat. So if you take all of the Marines from T4 to T5, I think that it effectively is -1 to wound against a lot of the stuff that kills Marines. And it makes it much harder for you to get 2s to wound against Marines with heavy weaponry, which is a really big deal. Strength 8 and Strength 9 wounding Marines on 2s is a big part of how Marines die. So
to put on top of that, if you also made it so they were -1 damage, then you'd be talking about a Marine that's durable. Because that's Death Guard Plague Marines, and you easily see 60 in the tournament list right now.
Yeah,
so I think that does work. That's pretty realistic.
What do you think?
I don't know what I don't have any like creative idea for how to fix it. I do wish for Marines and Chaos Space Marines both to have like I want them to feel like these elite guys who get a hail of fire put into them and like 1 dies, and then I want that to be okay. And I just don't know. There's so much of the game. Like my gut answer is to turn down the lethality of the game and let that be.
Yeah, that's true. Next question. Do you guys think Guard will keep all of their data slave buffs once the Codex comes out? Do we have a history of this?
No, they will not. They said they will not.
Okay.
I think they mentioned it in the thing.
Well, that question was easy then.
Yeah.
So other than, while we're waiting to see if there's any more questions.
Let's go back to that question, because the other way they might have been asking that question is, do you think those things will be in the Codex? I think the artillery thing, where they don't take the negatives, might be in the Codex.
Oh, God, I hope not.
So
I really don't want an army. We do not need one army that's good at indirect fire. That's the wrong way to deal with that. Indirect fire feels so bad. Like, it's really, like, I've won tournaments with Hive Guard. I've won tournaments with Night Spinners. I've won tournaments with Shadow Weavers. I'm now winning tournaments with D-Cannons.
Yep.
Indirect fire is wildly broken in 40K. It is not okay. Okay. And if you make one army that's really good at it, that means that everyone who doesn't have the option of starting mechanized with infantry loses. So wave serpents are like 150 points. Sorry, Eldar, you're not going to be able to mech and have your army do anything. You can't have a 150 point troop transport that doesn't shoot enough. So there's a lot of armies like that, though. Chaos Space Marines can't start meched. They don't have that option. The Chaos Space Marines should just not get to have cultists or any of the things that do objectives. The 5-man Chaos Space Marine units that do the objectives. Like the fact that your whole backfield can disappear to indirect fire, it does not make the game more fun. And I'm worried that they're going to go too hard in on guard. On indirect fire for guard. That's a big concern for me.
I always see indirect fire as if people bring one indirect fire unit, they've done it correctly. Like that's what the book has hit indirect fire in a way where somebody's like, I'm going to use this to pick up stuff and to threaten things. The second you see somebody take a second or more unit of indirect fire, that unit has been pushed too far. And I think it's such a fine balancing point that I would just sort of prefer it was always bad. And so people are like, okay, I'll take one unit because I need this thing.
I like that they nerfed them in 7 different ways, so have guard are just bad now. But I actually like the spotter idea for indirect fire. Like you can shoot an indirect fire at something that the indirect fire unit can't see, but only if X can see it. Like I think that's better. The problem with only one army having indirect fire is it will remove a lot of the meta. But if multiple armies have good indirect fire, then guard is at least scared of the other indirect fire. But that's not where we're at. Everybody else.
When you get into the range wars, which is just a miserable place for most people to be in. You're like, oh, I've got my 36-inch, you've got your 48-inch indirect fire, you're trying to get it closer to me or whatever, and then there's an army that doesn't do that, and there's just like every game I just get blown up hiding behind my building. Like good.
I think the current. So he says that's all. Super agree on indirect. How would you implement a system for indirect that's fair? I think the current system is fine.
Yeah,
you just shouldn't have guard ignore it. That's all. The D cannon shooting on 4s is okay, and then Chuck is one of the only opponents that has figured out that 4 is a weapon skill or a ballistic skill change and not a minus. So Chuck stands in forests. Right? Or uses his Tzeentch -1, and now I'm hitting on 5s. Like the Eldar indirect is not as big of a problem. It's just that if guard is given pointed effectively, and God forbid if the Death Strike rules we're all seeing are real. But like if guard is given a lot of indirect fire reasonably pointed, it will ruin the meta. That's my opinion. That's my concern. And we don't have Mitch here to tell us how it's going to be fine because because it's Imperium, so naturally he's going to be fine with it.
Yeah, they can do wrong.
Right. So I do have a giant guard army, a very big guard army. As soon as we have rules, we'll try to get Chuck over here, and we're going to recreate. When I came back to the game, I was playing guard. This is 6 years ago, almost 7. I was playing guard, and Chuck was playing chaos, and that's all we were playing. And we played so much guard versus chaos. I bet we played 30, 40 games in 8th edition together, just the two of us.
That's kind of how we learned. Chaos. We were at the point where we were learning the game.
Yeah,
so it didn't really matter what we brought. We were just trying to learn how to maneuver through the turns and understand how to maximize the rules and learning close combat and all that maneuvering and stuff. So
guard was a great first army for me when I came back because of it was very math focused, which my brain does quickly and easily. And so I could figure out how to do shooting. And then the idea of positioning units so that they have multiple shooting options so that the other shooting on your shooting phase dictates how the later shooting goes. That felt very fluid to me. And then I had to learn screening, but I didn't really play with a lot of close combat. So all the close combat trickery, I didn't have to learn at the same time as I was learning how to play at a tournament and how does the order go and how do you play the mission? And, like I could kind of just focus on, I have this army that can die because it's not particularly durable, and I can just kind of hang out here and shoot at my opponent and stand on objectives. Wonderful first army. That book is the same book from 7 years ago. So I think that a new codex is going to be really excited for me personally.
I'm looking
I
forward to
will
them.
play guard.
Hopefully,
I will play guard for sure. I love my guard army.
I hope they at least tone down, if not completely remove, guards. We hate chaos stuff.
Oh my god, yes.
It is so nerve-wracking to be like, okay, well, I'm playing chaos, so guard's just a weird bad matchup if they bring the right things.
So somebody points out, what if you ruled that any base size can go between buildings, so that the soul grinder could? I think that's a difficult ruling. Do you only make that rule for the soul grinder? Because I don't want everything to be able to fit everywhere, because that removes a lot of the nuance of placing terrain.
At one point, they frontline. I don't know if it still exists, but I know the rule existed that if the gap wasn't large enough, that you could just sort of tilt the model and go through.
Okay.
I think something like that definitely helps. It does mean that in a majority of those games, you need the soul grinders to deep strike, but I think in general that's the right answer. Because I guess no, if it's player placed, I can place my side of the board, making sure that they can have like a straight line. My opponent's job is to then place something in the way of the gaps that I've made, right? And so I can get probably a third of the way across the board, and probably it's okay. It's not as good,
yeah,
but the list has been really performant, so not as good is probably still fine, and I think I would still really enjoy it. I also would be very sad. I put a lot of time into those bases, and now I have to make even bigger ones.
That's, by the way, that's Chase asking if we should roll it that way, and I don't think we should. I don't think that house rules to make certain models better is good, because the more we all play the same game, the more interesting it is, and the more data we can gather. And
Sure.
As someone that does tournament coverage every week, you don't want me to go live and say, this list won. However, there was this house ruling that allowed the soul grinders to go in any gap, which made them they're already very powerful. So I appreciate the creativity, but I don't think it would actually help.
I think I disagree.
Okay.
Because you love it when we block out the line of sight from the bottom of the floor. So you got to choose.
I actually don't.
Okay.
What I love is the terrain to just be built that way.
Okay. I would love the terrain to be built in such a fashion that I can play my models. Right? Like I think
the base size is wrong. So, I think the base size needs to be fixed by GW. I'm saying that this is a GW problem and not a one-off tournament problem. That's what I'm saying.
Can say very confidently that as a business, they're not going to make the choice to recall and reopen and repackage a different base. So that's not going to be a fix.
But I don't want. I understand where you're coming from. In general, I don't want one-off rules at specific tournaments. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Well, I want everyone to block off line of sight blocking. Right. I don't know that I want everyone to make a rule that allows soul grinders to get skinny and go through holes. I don't know.
It's an interesting question. I hadn't really thought about it. I'll go look and see what ITC does, because I know at one point they had a ruling for that to allow bigger models to go through gaps.
Oh, that's true. Maybe there's already a ruling to protect you here.
Maybe it exists, and I just never even thought about it, because who possibly couldn't fit through a section?
Right. Because I know there's Tyler Bortel had problems with the barbed hydrodual space, which might be the same base.
I think it might. Yeah, it at least seems like
it's similar. At least they're both such giant circles that whether or not they're and one's from Forge World. Soul grinders are Forge World as well, or no?
No.
Okay.
But I bet you the Forge World entry.
Plastic?
Yeah.
Oh, neat. Okay. It's just such a big, old-looking model to me.
Well, I
guess
it's older than most of the players in the game, so yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see here. Scythe Terradual. Does it say what kind of base it comes with? If it does, do we trust that anyway? 127 millimeter round base. So maybe I'm wrong about it being 160. Or maybe I don't know.
Or maybe it's even bigger.
Yeah.
If you guys want to see how big those bases are, there's a bit rep on our channel of me playing Gene Stealer Cult versus Nurgle Demons. And he has a soul grinder on the map. And it's hilarious because the bit reps are top down. It's hilarious to see how big the bases are for the two soul grinders walking around.
Almost a full neoprene objective marker.
Yeah.
I think that might be the one benefit.
It's big enough where someone couldn't take the objective from you without being in combat with you.
Yeah, I think that's the value it brings.
Yeah.
This is mine.
Yeah.
You kill me or you fight me.
That's great.
Otherwise, you can't have it.
Well, I think we've wrapped it up here. We've talked about the things. We've answered the questions.
We did it.
We appreciate all of you for joining us live on this Sunday morning. It's also football season, so and SoCal's probably being streamed right now too. There's all types of reasons that people should watch things other than us. So thank you, everyone. We will be back in 2 weeks' time, but remember that this week on Thursday morning, you've got Tuesday morning, you have This Week in 40K at 7 a.m. with Billy and Colin, the show that is neither grim nor dark. And then you'll have TNG on the weekend with Tyler talking about why you don't go to nonstop tournaments while also trying to get a PhD. We had a conversation with him last night where he's like, I am so tired I can barely function, and I'm trying to play 40K. So I'm hoping that Tyler talks about that because it's a really good lesson about spreading yourself too thin. So that's going on. We have Frontiers this week. We're going to have Bit Reps this week. Lots going on. Thank you guys for loving the network. We love doing it, and we'll be back soon enough. Bye, everybody.
Bye.